Okay, I'm going to introduce myself right now. Hi, would you like to come up on stage? Thank you very much. Here I am. I'm the guy between lunch and, between you and lunch, essentially. I want to talk about the princess in the room today. The princess called pricing, right? And everybody knows you got to treat the princess like royalty. I want to pick up on a couple of things that we have heard over the last couple of hours. So we had James talking about the data economy. So there's more and more data out there for us to make decisions. We had Matthew, so finally saying pricing is all over the shop. Thank you very much. And then we had Buddy telling us, telling us it's hard to increase, easy to drop. As long as you hit budget, though, happy life, happy wife. And then Bilal telling us when he asked the question, who's in charge of pricing, everybody went quiet when they got home. So it might be good to have a look at the art and science of pricing and really look at it from 3 angles. The first one, I want to know, is bar actually still relevant? Or is it a concept completely outdated? Secondly, I want to know, is the data that we're using to come up with bar still relevant? With so much stuff going on in the industry, do we really still rely on our old just PMS data, for example? And then lastly, I want to look at the road ahead and what's happening in the future, hopefully. If I would have stood here a couple of years back, it would have been relatively easy. I would have said, hey guys, look at the left, that happens when you have one price. Look at the right, that happens if you have multiple prices. Everybody would have said, oh, great, yeah, we don't want to leave money on the table. We don't want to pass up profits. So hence, we're going to have different rate levels, so on and so forth. Reality, though, is it has become a bit crowded out there. And the reason I say it has become a bit crowded, let's look at our distribution landscape over the last couple of years. In 2007, incredibly on Booking.com, you had 29,000 hotels. In 2016, you have 884,000 hotels that are being featured. So they have grown by quite a bit. And if you then include that vacation rentals, holiday rentals, villas, so on and so forth are included in that, it's not only us out there anymore. There's other options for the consumer that they can choose. Overall, the world today has evolved. Couple of stats, if we look at the population of today, 50% is approximately male, 50% is female. There's about 60% covered by Asians, followed by Americans and Africans, and then the Europeans. To give you a relative overview of the population that exists in the world today. 44% of us only have access to internet. That means 56% still don't. But 75% of us own a mobile phone or a smartphone, so to speak. So there's still an incredible potential for us to go out there and replicate what we have done over the last couple of years, but equally going into markets where we have been for so many years that we can't just do what we did over the last 5 years. Yeah, we're all talking about total revenue management. It's fantastic. We want to go down that route. I fully agree. Yet, let's not forget about the princess. The princess still wants to be treated well because in a lot of cases, it's still 70% of your overall profit. And if you look at the development statistics, especially in Asia, the economy hotels are booming. It's 80 to 90% pure rooms revenue that is coming through the door, with a little bit of F&B here and there, but the majority will still be around the rooms revenue. So the princess is not going to go away. The princess is going to keep on staying with us. It's fair to say the consumer, the distribution landscape, and to a certain extent our pricing has evolved over the last couple of years. So if we look at the distribution landscape, you had offline business all the way from Thomas Cook in the beginning, all the way to the likes of Airbnb, so on and so forth, now cropping up left, right, and center. On the pricing landscape, we started with the super savers in the airline industry, and now we're moving all the way to near-field communication, beacon technology, or geo-specific pricing within your area. And lastly, we then come into the consumer. The consumer has evolved the fastest. Back in the day, most of us remember what a Nokia is. If I ask my daughter what a Nokia is, she will look at me. But she knows what an iPad is. She knows it very well. So we are more savvy, we're more informed, more opinionated. And I would have normally stopped at connected, but the next big trend seems to be internables. So now you're not wanting wearables, but you want that stuff under your skin to make it even more fancy. Is that where we're going? Well, soon maybe all of us are going to be interfaced. Well, that means we need to evolve as well. Can you imagine? We can all sit somewhere else and then... So essentially we need to evolve, and with more competition, with more complexity, the lines blurring not only between rate products, but equally within our hotel industry itself. Who's looking after the website? Is it marketing now? Is it revenue management? Is it a bit of both? Who looks after digital, the remarketing stuff? I don't know. It's you. No, it's me. No, it's not me, it's you. And then at the end, somehow it still gets done and muddled together. But we're still trying to give a service at the end of the day. So we can't forget that. We're still a service provider, and if our price is fantastic and the experience is really, really bad, your price is wrong, essentially. So there's a lot of factors that we need to take into consideration looking at it from a 360 perspective. So my question is really, is bar still up for the challenge of today? So let's define bar. So bar has been around for quite a bit. It was introduced by us copying or mimicking the airline industry, so to speak. We have complicated it a bit more, I do believe, for good, for bad, for indifference. And then we're looking at the bar. Essentially, if you look at it, is a rate that is available to the general public. Would everybody agree with that? Yeah? It further on is not prepaid, correct? Yeah? Still like this? Not impose any cancellation or change penalties for that rate product. So we call that unfenced. Yet it also includes some fenced rates if you look at other definitions. So there's a bit of confusion still out there today as to what exactly is bar. And that's why I want to talk about bar today, to say, okay, let's try and understand the DNA of bar. The DNA of bar is relatively simple. It has a price element. It has a cancellation element to it, non-cancelable, cancelable, maybe cancelable. And it has a guarantee attached to it, prepaid, non-prepaid, post-paid. And lastly, it will have some form of package elements, let's call them. It could be room only, it could be breakfast. When we look at bar, it's generally room only, it's the best available rate, it's on the day and no prepayment. Correct? That's what we define bar, or that's what we have been taught. This is how we define bar. And that goes back as far as 2000 and even prior. So we come into the first hurdle when we look at the matter of tracking. I guarantee you that if I lay all of your market segmentations on the table, there'll be a big difference between the left of the room towards the right of the room. Just by looking at how people treat effectively the same, different. A bar coming via the OTA, is that still considered a bar, or is that going into my OTA segment? We are using leisure and corporate. So we don't really use bar. So we have a little bit here and a little bit there. So the tracking overall is also very confusing. And when we had the earlier discussion about, do we speak the same language with our owners? Nope. Do we speak the same language amongst ourselves? Well, let's be honest, sometimes we don't, right? But we all nod and say, when that conversation comes up. Let's go back to the beginning and think about, I open a new hotel in a market. I don't have another hotel there, so some might run feasibility studies. For us, it starts with a price positioning exercise. Generally, I don't know how small it is, you have reviews at the bottom axis, and then you will have an average price on the left-hand axis, and then you plot all your competitors, and essentially you whack yourself in the middle. What you're essentially doing is you're taking a macro-level approach, and then you're bringing it down to the area or city, then you're filtering it down to your competition, or your perceived competition, so to speak, at this point in time. Am I right? That's generally how you do your price positioning, and once a year throughout budgeting, it kind of resurfaces, because some owner will say, ooh, too cheap, or even too expensive. So we're ending up with a bar structure. And there's a lot of discussion out there in the industry about, should it be continuous pricing, open pricing, do you need bar levels, don't you know bar levels? Regardless what you do in between, you will still have a top and still have a bottom, essentially, right? Because somebody will agree the bottom and somebody will agree the top. Otherwise, I want to see you going into the meeting and say, yep, your bottom is going to be 1. And your top is going to be 1 million. Not going to fly. So you got to set the parameters somewhere. What you do in between, different story. But it still doesn't answer the question, so how many rate products should I have? How many derivatives should I have of bar? Should I have different pricing by channel? And how do I price my different segments? And do I do it statically or do I do it dynamically? Do I do it off bar or just a separate entity on its own? Now, in order to understand that, we need to understand the paradox of choice. Or we got to go and taste marmalade. Yeah? One or the other. Back, I believe, in the 70s, they did a study where they let consumers try out different jams. And what they did is they had 6 jams and they had 24 jams. And what they saw is that they had a 30% better uptake when they only showed 6, which led to the belief that you give somebody too much choice, it is counterproductive. Now, over the years, there is so many studies that have tried to replicate that, and a lot of them have not been able to, until recently when they have linked it back to the paradox of choice to really say, okay, it does qualify fully if there are certain elements met. For example, you really, really, really want that vacation. Then too much choice is not going to help you. Less choice will make you a better decision. They've then gone cross-industry. They have given people chocolate and let them try. And similar results. They have given people retirement funds to choose from, investment choices. Most of the time what happened is you gave too much choice and the complexity increased, people just don't get it, and they make poor decisions. Is that happening to us as well? Us as the operator, us as the pricing gurus, us who takes the princess to prom? But not only do we need to understand the marmalade, we also need to understand apples. And it's really about product differentiation. And product differentiation, now we're crossing the lines over to marketing. Marketing will tell you all about product differentiation. But we need to understand it because we need to price it, right? Is price going to be our differentiator? No, because we're taught all the way from the beginning it's all about value. It's all about value creation. So it's not only my USPs against my competitors, but I got to make sure that the one segment doesn't buy into the other segment. Otherwise, we're using fancy words like cannibalization to say one is eating into the other. Talking about apples, Apple has actually done quite a good job at that by gaining a competitive advantage within their industry. And every year over the last years, they were told you can't go any better with Apple because they already have done the iPhone. So the share prices again went up because they came out with a different version of the iPhone. Smaller, more budget conscious, and it's more for the female travelers. Right? So again, they've proved that by giving a good product differentiation, you can still influence certain consumers that you currently don't have. Once you have understood both of it, and I'm sure we all do that every time we set up a new hotel, we're coming up with a pricing structure. So that's generally by room type, and we have the different levels. We have a top, we have a bottom, and then we have value add rates, we have offline rates, and generally you have your promotional rates or your advanced purchase. Who in the room would have a pricing structure relatively similar to that? Yeah? Most people are nodding? Fantastic. Let's look at reality, eh? Pricing in today's world. So, you have your bar rate. Your bar rate then has derivative rates of value packages, let's say breakfast, promotional and saver. And generally, they're derived of bar somehow with a percentage or an additional add-on price or discount price, correct? That's how we normally price. You move bar, everybody else moves. And then we have dynamic wholesale rates, and when we have dynamic corporate rates, and both generally discounts off bar. And then you have the static ones. And that's where the first fun part begins, the likes of hotel beds or GTA. So I'm going to sell bar, and I'm hotel beds, I'm going to sell bar. But now I'm looking at my commission level, and let's say I get 20% of my bar on my dynamic rates, and I get 30% of my static rates. So I look at the bar that I'm selling today and say like, today I am going to use my static wholesale rate to sell that bar customer. Tomorrow I'm going to use the other one because it gives me a higher percentage, because now the difference between brand web and me is only 10%, so I can use that to drive business into my own pocket by driving more profit. It's still coming from bar as far as we're concerned, because it's still a derivative of bar. So pretty powerful, this one. And then we're going to the OTAs. And I put desktop behind it, and you will see in a couple of minutes why. Again, we're trying to replicate. We're trying to replicate our own structure on our website. Now, sometimes you say, no, actually, I only give you something on my website, so I differentiate myself from the rest of the crowd. But you have the option of doing a bed and breakfast rate. You have the option of putting a value add rate or a saver or a promotional rate. And most of you in the room, I would imagine you have some kind of saver or non-saver on the OTAs. What is the key difference? Well, first of all, it's price. And second of all, one is prepaid, one is non-prepaid, correct? In general? And then we have packages, which is room plus flight, and you pay extra commission on extra discount, which is fine. They buy the flight and that together, so you don't really see it. Now we're coming to the fun part. So I have geo-fenced rates, which really just means today for China I want to give 10%, so everybody who goes on a Chinese website will get 10% for that OTA. I give an additional 5% if you go through my app or mobile, and I'm talking on the OTA side. And then equally we have our private sale, which is a closed user group. So hence, it's technically not bar anymore, because it is a closed user group. And I'm going to come into the myth of closed user group in a second. And then the fun really starts. So Expedia decides, hey, we're going to have a bit more market share here in Asia. Agoda and Booking.com are really winning over. So it doesn't matter if you sell a prepaid or non-prepaid rate. My customer within 24 hours can still cancel free of charge. And if you as a hotel say no, guess what? We pay for it. So they have turned your promotional rate into a bar rate all of a sudden. And most of us still have discounts available on the day for the day. So is my best available rate still best available? Question mark? Thank you, Expedia. Then we got our friends in Indonesia, Traveloka. Happy days. Even if you don't sign a contract with them, they still sell you. Right? You as a guest might get a phone call a day prior and say, sorry, your hotel has been fully booked, but we're moving you to a hotel that is actually contracted with us. But again, they're pulling rates from Expedia, they're pulling rates from hotel beds, and then guess what? They equally have private sale. And they have been very, very successful at that. One of the biggest ones in Indonesia coming out. And why is it impacting us? Because guess where Indonesians who travel will book? They will book on Traveloka. And then they will come out and have commission demands, so on and so forth. And you're starting the entire having fun game of trying to negotiate down, and they're trying to negotiate up. Let's look at the geofence trades then. So both Agoda and Expedia do that. Now, Expedia is a bit cheeky. Expedia does it by point of sale. So you type in .com.my, you get a different price .com.au. Our friends at Agoda at least do it by IP address. So you got to download some spoofing software to replicate the IP from a different country in order to get that benefit. If you go through that trouble, I give you 20%. Right? For Expedia, on the other hand, go to Bali and try out which nationality at the moment gets the cheapest prices. And then I get a phone call from C-Trip. C-Trip tells me, Fabian, and this is a true story, right? I'm not making this one up. That happened 2 weeks ago. Fabian, as you know, we are pulling the rates from Agoda. Okay. Why are they cheaper than us? Well, what rates are you pulling? Well, I'm pulling your bar. I said, okay, the same. Yeah, but if you go on the Chinese website for Agoda, it's 10% cheaper. I said, no, cannot. Oh, yeah. You go on there, and then I call Agoda and say, you have a private sale on. IP address, Chinese, of course. And then C-Trip goes, this is my prime market. Can I also have 10% discount, please? So I have two options. I say, Agoda, sorry, don't talk to C-Trip, which ain't going to happen. I can take off the discount, in which case I'm shooting myself in the foot because Agoda is not giving me the share of the Chinese market that I want. Or I give C-Trip another 10% that I really don't want to give them because, hey, your Chinese market is producing. So what does C-Trip then do? C-Trip disappears. Because I clicked the wrong button. C-Trip then, what they do is, they will go and call hotel beds to get the static wholesale rates and then sell it as a private sale. Yeah? So do you take all of that into consideration when you change your rate by $10? Fun and games out there. Brings me to my favorite thing, closed user groups, right? And we got to define closed user group here. Closed user group means it's really a closed user group. It's not publicly available. Okay. So you go on Expedia.com, okay? So what is the first thing that you notice? Hey, they took my slogan. They have the best price guarantee out there. Otherwise, they get up to 2 times the difference. Thank you, Expedia. Thank you. Second of all, you get 3 times the Expedia points and an additional 8% if you go through the app. Again, Expedia, thank you very much. Oh, and you get 10% off or more if you are a closed user group. And it's really difficult to become a closed user. You have a little button. It says connect with Facebook. You click that button. You're a closed user. 10%. And then 10% because you mimicked the Chinese IP address. 20%. and it's bar. So do I track that as bar now? Do I track that as private sale? It's still coming from bar. Let me check if Agoda does the same thing. Well, Agoda, first of all, tells you, hey, look at that. You sign up as a loyalty member. And look at all of those wonderful things. You even get United mileage points because it flies around Asia like crazy, eh? But you get AirAsia as well. We're a Tune Hotel Group, so I would say that if I look at this room, the tightest ones with AirAsia would most probably us because the same fella owns both. Yeah? We have big points, but we don't do United. Right? And most of hotels won't do either. So who gets the benefit? Again, a geo-specific feeder market, let's say the US, for example. And then again, the difficulty of logging in to become a closed user. Long is it gone where to fill out 20 pages of your personal information. It's now first name, last name, email, and password. Thank you. Then we cookie you, and then we anyways know what you do. Right? You come to my website, and I'm going to remarket to you over and over and over again until you throw up over our images. So my question to you is, what do you think? Bar still relevant? And that's the Q&A part, so please feel free to be really active and ask questions and talk. Like really talk, like really get energized. I'm giving you a look for a reason, Matthew. No?
It's relevant as a talking point. But yeah, the rates are all messed up all over the bloody place these days. Every OTA is doing random sales here and there. We go into have a look at our OTAs. For some reason we see Expedia drop down 12%, Travelocker's drop down 15%, and then we say, oh, why are you doing that? They're like, oh, sorry, you caught us, and then they fix it for a week or two sometimes, and then sometimes it changes again on a different OTA. It's a game of cat and mouse. And I'm not quite sure what's going to happen, except I think contracts with hotel groups will slowly change for additional strength there. In all honesty, the independent hotels are going to get bounced left, right, and centre all over the place. Many OTAs and many distribution partners already state, if you want to sign up for us, you are required to sign up for our private sales. You don't get a choice. If you don't, have a nice day. You don't get to sign up. Stuff like that. So I don't know if the end game is regulation. Probably not. But I don't know. I think maybe last year available coming out of some of the contracts might make more things more fun.
I feel somebody's taking advantage of the princess. And how does it feel to be revenue managed? Essentially. So let's look at the next P. Thank you very much for that insight. Do we still use the right data sources? And is the process that we're following to finding a right bar price still relevant? So I'll go back to what the session is all about, the art and the science. Right? So the science is a computer, it's a machine. They do the statistics, they run everything, they crunch the numbers, blah, blah. The art is to say yay or nay. That's essentially what it comes down to. Right? Somebody got to set the direction, the strategy, and somebody got to say yes or no to whatever recommendation you will get from any kind of system that you're using. Now, let's go a step back and look at, okay, what is pricing really? Well, pricing, we need to understand price discrimination. And price discrimination is the practice of charging a different price for the same good or services. We might call it revenue management, right? Or part of revenue management. So there is a first degree. And it's very rare because it will have a different price for every unit consumed. That would be the holy grail of one-on-one revenue management. Right? What is more commonly used by us is the second degree of price discrimination. It's really all about charging a different price for different quantities. So I have a corporate contract, I have a wholesale contract, they promise me the world and 10,000 bookings and they get a cheaper rate. Equally, my group pricing, I get you 20 rooms, I give you additional spend, blah, 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 blah. We drop the price generally. A third degree is by market segmentation, bar versus discount versus package. So we're actually doing 2 out of 3, right? That's pretty good odds. Do we though? Do we really do that kind of price management? Again, coming up to our positioning, we now have set our structure, we have set the top, we have set the bottom, we have set our structure, our derivatives, so on and so forth. So now we actually go and start managing our prices. And we're doing that really from an inside out. So we forecast our own demand, and then we're going over maybe looking at the impact of the city, and then we might go over some macroeconomics, right? Yet, when we did price positioning, we looked outside in. We started with the market to then only bring it back and define us. Now we're just doing the other way around. And I question the tool sets that we are using to do that. If you have a revenue management system or not, it doesn't really matter at this stage, because your favorite friend most likely is still called Excel. Right? We all still take the data from here, dump it into there, then play around with it, and then the art comes, yes, we're going to change our price. Yes, we took on this additional data. We do a bit of rate shopping, right? And more often than not, rate shopping is not 100% reliable, depending on scraping technology or any kind of other technology that they use. We use analytics to help us come up with a price, but only then to double check with our Excel sheet if it says yes. If it says yes, we go ahead. And for good measure, some of us might or might not throw in guest reviews, so a bit of sentiment pricing. Only to then go back to STR and say, how well did I do against the market? Right? That's essentially what we then do, because then we can go to our owners and say, yeah, but look, we're at least outperforming the market. I know it doesn't really help in the discussions when you don't hit the numbers, but it makes us feel good. Because, hey, if you would have employed the other guy, you would have lost even more. And not only that, but do we take the right data into consideration? I mean, we're using Excel because there's other data sources out there that we need to consider. And I want to talk about a couple of those. Let's talk about vacation rental. And it's not relevant for every city on every planet. But considering they have, I believe, 190 countries and an awful lot of inventory, it is something that we potentially want to start thinking about, right? As a consumer option to go out there. When they started in 2009, it's find a place to stay. Then they moved over the find a place to stay, moved a bit more, added new stuff to it. And then they really, in 2015, said, welcome home. Right? That's a powerful slogan that our marketing guys have helped us develop. Us as in Airbnb. And in 2016, we now have so many guests in so many cities, and Accor actually saying, hey, by the way, we just spent 148 million on one fine stay. Marriott says, piece of cake. We did that on Starwood. Right. But the Accor Hotel CEO says it's foolish and irresponsible to fight against the sharing economy. I would actually disagree with it. It's not a sharing economy. Those people are monetizing. They're not just sharing. They take my customer and rip that good revenue out of my hand, right? And I want it back every time. But if you don't believe in that, well, let's look at Agoda again. Well, look, 775,000 private rentals and hotels, excuse me, shouldn't it be hotels and private rentals? Still not. Well, Booking.com has its own little tab up there, and in case you haven't seen, out of the 616, 50%, again, before us, 257,000 vacation rentals. So the big brands in the room, can you please have a word with them and tell them to change that? Right? Now that you're even bigger. If you're still not convinced, let's look at Orchard Road. So I was really bored yesterday evening, as you are, and decided to do my favorite thing called rate shopping. Right? So I typed in Orchard Road. On the right, you see the hotels that come up. On the left, you see Airbnbs coming up. And then I said, oh, okay, somebody will be smart enough and say, oh, yeah, but you get an entire room, or you get an entire stay, or you can actually share the apartment, blah, blah, blah. So I checked both. I checked private room, shared room, and the entire place. And guess what? They are competing with our friends, the hotel, so far in the lower category. But if I go to other places, outside of Airbnb, the more luxury home rentals, they will compete with other ones. Right? Family with children. If you don't have family products that are well designed and you're staying for 4, 5, 6 nights, I'd go Airbnb. Who in the room has used Airbnb? Who would use Airbnb again? They actually have a 97% satisfaction rate. And they say it's because you actually meet the host. So it's much harder for you to tell somebody that you know and like that they're crap. Right? Maybe we need to do that. Maybe the hotel manager needs to high five every guest that comes in and out. Right? TripAdvisor will be happy. Website statistics. Who of us takes website statistics into pricing decisions? Right? Who knows that on a Monday I have more visitors to my site than on a Tuesday? Or on a Wednesday, or on a Thursday, or on a Friday, or on a Saturday? You might only have more eyeballs, but more eyeballs, you could argue, can lead to more conversion. Right? Well, lucky me, conversions. So essentially, this is some data that we have modeled for Tune Hotels Group, that you can see that there is conversions all over the shop on different days, and if you look at the different views. And if you look at the Saturday, it's very, very high conversions out of a smaller pot. And then we have more people on a Monday, Tuesday looking, and Wednesday is really not a good day to change your prices from what we have seen, because it's kind of a confused day. I don't really know if I'm part of the cool guys Tuesday, or if I'm already belonging to the weekend crowd, Thursday, Friday. So people are generally a bit iffy about that. And on Thursday, you start planning your weekend. You might start next week, so on and so forth. And on Saturday, you forget that you actually wanted to go out tonight, so you quickly book a room. And with mobile, even easier. And let's not forget, we all have our moments, eh? Each and every one of us. Amy had 419. The copy of that report, you just Google it. It came out, I think, December or November 2015. Just Google Amy's moments for anybody who's interested to see the entire Google report. So coming back to my bar, which of those 419 times do I need to be correct? Right? 1, all 419. And lastly, there are 4 types of moment that they define. I want to know moments, want to go moments, to do moments, want to buy moments. So each of those moments, we got to decide at what, if we need to price correctly, or does marketing need to deliver a different message? And then we have paid moments. So people always talk about you got to be SEO, SEO, SEO. Well, SEO, that's a screenshot of my laptop. Googling myself. I have to say thank you very much, Hilton, for buying my keywords. Thank you, you're coming up first. Spent a good amount of money on that. The SEO one, we don't have a problem, we're top. But unfortunately, the consumer will have 99% of paid advertising before they actually see my so-called SEO. And if you go to my mom and ask her about SEO, she will have no clue what you're talking about. So guys, I know we are stretched, right? We're dealing with a myriad of systems, and it kind of has fallen on revenue managers to say, you got to make sure that the interfaces are all working correctly. Not only that, but you got to ensure that the website also runs effectively and that you can book in 99 different languages. Of course, that's really important. And then connect and transact in most of the channels while keeping your price promises and your rate parity checks. And then lastly, I want you to know your rates of every competitor for every day in the future at any given time, right? What do you think? Is the data we still use and the process we follow still relevant? Who here uses all of the data that I've just mentioned in their pricing decisions? Right? So let's talk about the future. And Jackie is going like, move it, move it, move it. Yeah, quick, okay. Let's be quick. Okay. There's a buzzword out there at the moment, and I want to throw it out because we have a technology panel coming up later, and I'm sure somebody will come up with that word. It's called machine learning, right? And machine learning is a scary little thing. It's Google's self-driving cars, Amazon and Netflix giving you recommendations, Facebook, the more you look at somebody's pictures, the more they will come up. So I recommend if you don't want to see somebody on your search results, don't click. Customer response from Expedia. They have already trialed and tested it. So most of the time, there's not a human saying, hey, Jimmy. It's a computer saying, hey, Jimmy, and then writing back and giving you recommendations. And then fraud detection in insurance and bank. They have been using that for a long, long time, including governments. Is it getting mainstream in RM? This is a T-News article from, I think, last week, where our friends at Booking.com say, we have just introduced machine learning into our system. Ouch. Okay. Let's understand machine learning so we understand what it's actually. Machine learning is a subfield of computer science and artificial intelligence. So the stuff that you see on TV. Statistical modeling, where most revenue management or analytics provider come from, is a subfield of mathematics. Now, that is slightly different coming from one field or the other because you're dealing with different matter. The machine learning can learn from new data sets without relying on rule-based programming, which is different to your statistical stuff. And the reason I bring that up is because I guarantee you some owner, some asset owner, some CEO, some marketing folk, they will see that buzzword somewhere, and where do they go? Yo, revenue management, yo, we do machine learning, eh? Right? So you actually can say, no, no. And there's 4 types of learning, right? Supervised, unsupervised, semi-supervised, and reinforced. Who has kids here? I don't need to explain, you know all 4, right? For those who you don't have kids, supervised, I show you a picture of a dog, and I say that's a dog. That's a cat. Unsupervised is, here's a dog and cat, you figure it out. Right? Semi-supervised is a bit like, no, I told you it's a dog. Yeah, I told you again it's a dog. And then you reinforce is a bit like you trial and error. Now you know it's a dog, then you see it's a cat, and you kind of go like, was a cat, gotta go back to the dog. Essentially, it will try to find pockets in the data. It will find the answer in the data without you telling it, please go and look for that answer. How would it visually look differently? That's what McKinsey does for one of the major telecom companies globally. So they have run machine learning versus regression algorithms. If you look at the regression algorithm, that's a little green thing going from the left to the right. And then the ones that look like brain matter on an MRI scan, that's machine learning. And they looked at us to check the churn rate or the value from the customer when they churn. Right? So you can see that both of them are kind of going for the same stuff, but in a different way. And then Microsoft came, and Microsoft created a teenage girl on Twitter. Has anybody read that story? No? Yeah? Yeah, so Microsoft used unsupervised. It's like telling your 2-year-old, here's a pen, go to that wall. So they launched artificial intelligence, unsupervised, so they didn't give it any direction. Within 2 hours, it was becoming a bit racial and a bit controversial. Because people were starting to have fun with it, and because it's unsupervised, it essentially started mimicking the behavior it learns from out there, and people took advantage of it. So Microsoft took it down. Thank you, Microsoft. Next time, maybe semi-supervised, or maybe you give it a bit more supervision here. How can we use it? Well, we can use it to look at destination and market demands. You can tell me what my derivative should be at each of those days, not just my room types. Alert me when something is happening. I don't want to tell you what's happening. You're the system, you tell me what's happening. Right? That's why I pay you for. Alert me of people and what they're saying about me. That's a bit like the sentiment stuff, but real time. Hey, your GM didn't high-five that Expedia customer. He ain't happy. Work with any data. We know today that data comes and goes. Flash sales came, they kind of flashed away again, right? So the machine learning will detect, should I use that data or not? I don't want to tell it, you know what, let's trial it out for 6 months and see if we should use that data. Chances are it comes out inconclusive. Check on image variations on my booking engine, right? Do recommended funnel activations within the funnel. Expedia, Booking.com, Agoda are very good at that kind of stuff, to give you marketing messages to drive a bit of urgency when you go through the booking process. Ooh, there's only 3 hotels left. Ooh, there's only 3 rooms left. You go 3 hours later, there's still 3 rooms only left. There will always be 3 rooms only left. And then recommend marketing promotions. So do I put freebie in my subject line of my EDM? What is my click rate? What is my opening rate then? Right? Maybe I can move it from 10% to 20% opening rate. If I have achieved that, I go to the next part and look at what's inside my EDM in order to drive more revenue for my hotels. Because at the end of the day, we are here to make more money for whoever owns the building. And then lastly, possibly, maybe we can have a conversation and take them for dinner. Okay, so is ML another buzzword like flash sales? Is it come? Is it gone? What does the future hold? A bit of everything, I believe. Considering I now need to stop. Thank you very much. Clap, cheer, yay, we have lunch.